Welcome to Sharika Talks, Unraveling the Truth, a journalist's quest. Subscribe for the truth.
Chapter 20, The Sacred Pulse and the Shadow Beneath the Guardian. Sachin's heartbeat spiked. He trembled with fear. Is this the end? The spark was unexpected. A tiny, malevolent star igniting on the metal ball in his hand. For a fraction of a second, Sachin saw death itself, and his heart hammered against his ribs. He had to make a decision. Save himself or save the secret. Just a week ago, arriving in the ancient city of Varanasi, he had believed this would be the final adventure. He thought the first city in history was the epicenter of the entire puzzle. But the entrance to the underground tunnels, hidden deep within the murky waters of the Ganges, was a real challenge. Without the scuba gear he'd brought from the Dwaraka unit and the precise coordinates, locating the submerged trapdoor would have been impossible. The claustrophobic tunnels which followed were a treacherous maze, leading to various crypts and chambers whose contents delivered a shocking revelation. This wasn't the end of the puzzle, but merely the beginning of a much larger one. For a week, everything had gone according to plan. The two-story crypt just behind the idol of the Lakshmi Narasimha Temple was supposed to be the real entrance to everything, with Narasimha, the fourth avatar of the god Vishnu, as the guardian. Though the bottom tier was more than 10 feet high and elongated beneath the banks of the Ganges, the top tier was only 4 feet high from the ground. Even though the outer temple and idols were rebuilt after every invasion by Mughals, Tughlaqs, Khiljis, and others, the entrance to the crypt remained unfound, disguised as a granite slab that could only be opened from below or with a suction cup, perhaps attached to the original Narasimha idol centuries ago. And then, on this final day, just as he finished packing the last items in his backpack for the final run, all hell broke loose. Sharika hadn't slept for more than 2 hours. Her body ached. Her period had begun that morning, bringing with it the familiar, dull throb in her lower abdomen. Usually, her cramps were manageable, but this time, the physical exhaustion of the last 2 weeks and the mental fatigue of the last 12 hours had caught up to her. The exhaustion amplified the pain into a persistent, draining misery. She made a mental note to take a painkiller after reaching Puri, before heading to the Jagannath Temple. She remembered her grandmother's stern voice. "Don't even speak of temples when you're bleeding." The tradition was deeply ingrained. Women were forbidden from entering sacred spaces during menstruation. Some, like Sabarimala, even barred women of fertile age altogether to preserve the god's celibacy. Sharika had always argued, if goddesses are women too, do they get periods? And where do they go then? They're women too, aren't they? She knew that in some temples, even the goddesses were ritually moved out of the sanctum for 5 days a month. But then, what's the difference between man and God? Her grandmother would scold her again for every question she asked. A faint smile touched her lips at the memory, a fleeting warmth followed by the familiar pang of loss. Her grandmother had passed away 6 years ago. Though not a believer herself, Sharika had always accompanied her devout grandfather to temples. After her grandmother's death, she'd stopped caring about the old rules. She refused to believe a divine being would be fixated on that one aspect of a woman's body. It was a belief, and since she wasn't a true devotee, she felt it didn't apply. The train had whistled to a halt in Puri by 1 p.m., and after a quick check-in, she had gone straight to the temple. The Jagannath Temple, which literally meant Lord of the Universe. It was a mesmerizing sight, an enormous, fortress-like structure, standing guard on the shores of the Bay of Bengal, wrapped in myths and architectural wonders. Even with the sea roaring just meters away, no sound of the waves penetrated the main sanctum, a feat of acoustics that some called divine magic. Like the Brihadiswara Temple, it was said to cast no shadow on the ground at any time of day. Sharika marveled at the genius of ancient architects who could hand-carve granite with such precision and last a millennium, while modern engineers struggled to make a two-story building last 20 years. Another wonder was the flag atop the main spire, which always flew in the opposite direction of the sea breeze, and no birds or airplanes flew over the main sanctum. Scientists attributed this phenomenon to a massive, localized air current. The sanctum literally creates a massive vertical column of air from the sea breeze. Whether it was a deliberate design to keep the spire clear of bird droppings or a magnificent fluke, no one knew. Then there was the prasadam, the sacred food offering, which was said to never run short and never go to waste, regardless of the number of devotees. Sharika chuckled. The credit for what was likely brilliant temple management had, like everything else, been given to Lord Jagannath. But the greatest mystery was the Brahmapadartha. The idols of Jagannath, Balabhadra, and Subhadra were not carved from stone but from sacred wood, and they were replaced every 12 years in a ceremony known as Nabakalibara. The idols themselves were merely containers for the Brahmapadartha, a mysterious object housed within. The myth was that after Lord Krishna's cremation, his heart remained unburned. This divine relic miraculously washed ashore in Puri in the 11th century and was sealed within the first idol. It is said that the energy radiating from the Padartha is so immense that the wooden idols cannot contain it for long, hence the periodic replacement. During the transfer ceremony, the priests who perform the ritual are blindfolded and wear thick gloves, for it is believed that no mortal can withstand the energy of the Brahmapadartha and live. They claim to feel a distinct warmth and a pulse radiating from it. Probably the overactive imagination of the priests, Sharika thought, sitting among the devotees and eating the warm, sweet prasadam. But still, what could it be? An invaluable diamond, more precious than the Kohinoor? Whatever it was, she was almost certain it was now safely resting in the Deep Enterprises facility in the Thar Desert. It had to be the reason Sachin had spent so many days here. But she had no proof. Not yet. As she finished her meal, another thought struck her. Why had the great Chola kings focused their invasions on the east coast of India? They already controlled ports like Kollam on the west coast. Why not expand their dominion over Goa, Mumbai, or Gujarat? It would have given them far easier trade access to the Arabs, Turks, and Europeans. Why hadn't they? Prince Aditya Karakala had defeated the Marathas who ruled the west coast before his death, so it would have been easier for his brother, Rajaraja Chola, to capture that coastline. History books claim the Kalinga kingdom, modern-day Orissa on the east coast, was one of the hardest to conquer. The Mauryas, the Mughals, they all struggled. The magnificent, still-standing temples at Puri and Konark were a testament to Kalinga's strength. So why take such a risk? Were they searching for something? The Pallava prince, Bodhidharma, had traveled this same route on his quest to China. Could they all have been searching for the same divine material that Sachin had just stolen? A priceless, one-of-a-kind gemstone, perhaps? Or was she just trying to find patterns where there were none? She spent the rest of the day and the next filming at Puri and the nearby Konark Sun Temple, a breathtaking chariot of stone dedicated to the sun god. Now lying on the bed at her hotel room, she started watching those viral videos from Varanasi for the 100th time. She then decided to make a detour to Kashi. She didn't expect to find anything the police hadn't, but she felt an inexplicable pull to see the scene for herself. The Lakshmi Narasimha Temple in Varanasi closes at 12 p.m. and remains closed until 2 p.m. This made noon the perfect time for an escape for Sachin. The crowd on the banks of the Ganges made blending in easier, but the scattered wanderers, fishermen, and police patrols on the river made a night escape difficult. He could have escaped the way he came, but when the main scuba tank and the compact lung tank, which was supposed to be a backup, malfunctioned simultaneously, There was no other way. Now, standing on the top tier of the crypt, having just opened the slab and moved the 10-kilogram idol slightly to widen the opening, he froze as the footsteps and vibrations from the temple floor above stopped. The spark from the metal ball in his hand made him see death staring back. The decision wasn't made by his brain. It was a primal, spinal cord reaction. He had two choices: throw the explosive into the lower tier of the ancient crypt and climb up to the temple, or throw it at the main door and lunge for the lower crypt. His body chose for him. In a single, fluid motion, his arm cocked back and launched the centuries-old explosive sphere towards the main entrance of the temple. A millisecond before the world erupted in fire and thunder, he dove feet first into the darkness of the crypt, snatching the Narasimha idol as he went. The explosion was deafening. It ripped through the granite walls, shaking the ancient temple to its foundations. Stone shrapnel rained down like a deadly hailstorm. Instinctively, Sachin hoisted the heavy idol above his head as a makeshift shield. He felt a sharp, searing pain in his right hand as a chunk of stone slammed into it, and he knew his pinky finger was fractured. But there was no time for pain. He had to move. His eardrums felt like they had burst. His left ear was bleeding, and he could hear nothing but a high-pitched ringing in his right. He scrambled out of the crypt, his mind already racing. He had to seal the entrance, protect the knowledge of the tunnels. He strained, pushing the heavy granite slab back into place just as the first shouts from outside reached him. He knew Aishwarya was waiting at Kashi railway station less than 500 meters away. He could make it if he could scale the adjacent railway bridge from the riverbank. The bridge was more than 4 meters high from the ground, but he remembered a banyan tree near it, hanging its roots to the ground from above. If he could hang on, he could give his bag, its contents more valuable than his own life, into the safe hands of Aishwarya. It had to look like a simple robbery gone wrong. That was the only way out. His mind raced, fueled by adrenaline. He tied one handkerchief around his head and another over his face, leaving only his eyes visible. Thankfully, the ringing in his right ear subsided enough for him to hear. He had already made sure the malfunctioning scuba kit was secure in the lower crypt. It couldn't be found. It was 1:05 p.m., so there were few people nearby. As he burst from the now demolished temple, he saw the gathering crowd, their faces a mixture of shock and anger. His eyes fell on the true victims of the blast, 3 sacred cows lying motionless in the dust. Shit! He knew the people here might forgive the death of a man, but never the death of a cow. The mob, now just a few meters away, saw him, a thief holding the Narasimha idol after blasting the temple. He had no choice. With his bleeding right hand clutching the idol to his chest, he drew his trusted Glock 27 with his left and fired 7 rounds into the ground at their feet. The crowd scattered in panic. His call to Aishwarya connected just before the 4th gunshot. As he sprinted away, just as he began to speak, he heard her voice in the earpiece faintly. "Where should I come?" she asked, her voice calm and steady, unfazed by the gunshots. He gave her the precise location, a dead end near a large banyan tree at the end of the railway platform. He admired her intelligence. Reshmi or Nimi would have panicked, and he would have had a hard time explaining. And the others, he didn't even want to think about it. He reached the banyan tree within a minute, its thick roots dangling like ropes, only one of which was within grabbing distance from the riverbank. He could hear the mob behind him, closing in. Grabbing the root with his left hand, he swung out, using his momentum to run up the wall in an arc. As he neared the top, he flung the idol with all his might over the branch. As soon as it was in the air, he grabbed the thick branch with his bleeding right hand, pulling himself up and yanking the dangling root up with him. None of it was planned. He doubted he could have done it with careful planning. It was all panic and a primal fight-or-flight response, finding the only escape. It was a more perfect maneuver than he could have ever planned. The mob would have to take the long way around to reach him. Aishwarya had already caught the idol with her exceptional reflexes. He quickly exchanged his backpack for an almost identical one she held. "Deep Science City," he said, taking the idol back from her hand, his voice a ragged breath. She nodded once, turned, and walked calmly towards the station entrance as if nothing had happened. He ran along the tracks. A goods train was rumbling from the bridge behind him, while on the adjacent track, a passenger train was slowing to enter the bridge. He didn't have time to wait. He had to either jump onto platform 1 or turn back to catch the passenger train. But he wouldn't have enough time because of the approaching goods train. He slammed his left hand onto the platform edge and vaulted over. The only way to catch the passenger train now was via the foot-over bridge, and he could see the mob surging onto the platform through the entrance near the bridge. They were gathering more people as they moved, shouting and running to catch the thief. He took the stairs of the overbridge 3 at a time. 6 men were on the bridge, all wearing khaki pants and blue tracksuits. Hearing the shouts from the crowd and seeing the idol still clutched in his hand, they had decided to help. They fanned out in a horseshoe formation to block his path. The train engine was already on the bridge. It wouldn't stop. He had less than 15 seconds and no time to fight all 6 of them, not in his current state. He needed a distraction. He knew their plan: close in and attack all at once, just as the mob caught up. He changed direction slightly, running towards the shorter man on the left rather than directly towards the stairs on the right. Just before the tall man on the right started to close in, he jumped upwards as high as he could, raising his right knee and feigning a kick to the short man on the left. Then, he immediately pulled his other leg into the air, launching himself into a spinning heel kick. It was a flashy, impractical move for a real fight. Less powerful, less stable. But this wasn't a fight. It was a performance. His heel connected squarely with the nose of the tall man on the right. The impact sent the man stumbling into the railing and sent Sachin himself tumbling off the side of the overbridge. He had anticipated the fall, tucking and rolling to absorb the impact, crashing directly into the 2 men guarding the downward stairs. He heard a sickening crack of a rib. He had left the idol he'd clutched just before landing on the man's ribcage. It landed softly, square on the other man's stomach. Another piece of the failed robbery narrative. As they all tumbled down the stairs in a heap, Sachin was the only one still conscious. By the 12th step, he was back on his feet, using the momentum to sprint down the rest of the staircase. He reached the last coach of the moving train, grabbing the handrail and pulling himself aboard. Thanks to the metal sheets covering the overbridge, he was sure none of the passengers had seen the commotion. He saw the smear of red his bleeding hand had left on the rail and immediately headed for the toilet to clean up and change his appearance. With the new pair of clothes and the first aid kit, he was sure Aishwarya would have put in the bag as per his instructions. He would become just another face in the crowd. Sharika watched the viral videos again and again. The railway station CCTV footage, the shaky clips from tourist and local phones, they all showed the same masked figure. Measuring his height and movements and cross-referencing it with her location data, she knew with sickening certainty that it was Sachin. But he wasn't the only person she recognized. In one of the clips, standing coolly in a corner of the station entrance, was one of the women from the school games, the one Sachin had been talking to. She had Sachin's black bag slung over her shoulder, 2 suitcases, and a large rucksack at her feet. And then her breath caught in her throat. The tall man Sachin had kicked in the face on the overbridge, he hadn't changed much. It was Arjun Nair, the same energetic young RPF officer who had been on the Kerala Express with her. It felt like a lifetime ago. End of chapter 12.
Thank you for watching Unraveling the Truth, A Journalist's Quest. Subscribe to stay updated on Sharika's journey. Stay tuned for the next part.
Disclaimer. Unraveling the Truth, A Journalist's Quest is a work of fiction. The experiences, ideas, and theories presented by the characters, including the books they write, are purely fictional and do not reflect real-world events, beliefs, or ideologies. While some incidents and characters may be inspired by real-world scenarios, they are entirely fictionalized for storytelling purposes. The author does not endorse or share the viewpoints expressed by any character in this novel. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real events is purely coincidental. Viewer discretion is advised.